everyone, it's Judy Warner. Welcome back to this week's Ecosystem Podcast. Today we're talking about Signal Integrity 101. We're going back to the fundamentals, and who better to talk to that about other than Scott McMorrow of Samtec. I'm sure you know he's had over 30 years in the industry in signal integrity, and his colleague Matt Burns, who is also a high-speed application and marketing specialist, and together they're going to talk and teach us about the current state of affairs with signal integrity, and then tease up the Signal Integrity 101 series that they'll be coming out with. And I think you're really going to love it, and it's really going to be broken down into bite-sized pieces that I really think is going to help you up your game. Again, thanks for joining us. Now let's jump right into our conversation with Scott McMorrow and Matt Burns of Samtec. Hi, Scott. Hi, Matt. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're glad to have you on the Ecosystem Podcast.
Hi, Judy. How are you?
Always good to see you both, and I always learn a lot from both of you. So it's pretty exciting for me to have you both, and I think our audience is going to enjoy it. For those three people who may not know you, Scott, why don't you start off by introducing yourself and your background, and then Matt will go to you.
All right. Thank you. My name is Scott McMorrow. I am a strategic technologist for Samtec. I've been in the signal integrity industry for 30 plus years now, since the 90s. There you go.
Matt?
Judy, nice to be with you. Scott, always a privilege to be with you as well, sir. I work in technical marketing here at Samtec. I originally was trained as an engineer, but I haven't been a real engineer for probably as long as Scott's been working professionally. Maybe not quite that long. Sorry, Scott. But I try to play an engineer on podcasts like this when we talk about technology. And we're really, all those bad jokes aside, we're really excited to be here with Scott and you, Judy, to talk about some of the cool things that we're doing to help educate the market on challenges with Signal Integrity 101.
Well, when I heard about the things you had on the horizon, I wanted to pull you guys in because I get calls weekly. We need a signal integrity engineer. It's always signal integrity, right? And in the pool in which we all swim, of course, it's always a topic. Scott, you and I did a podcast, a few years ago now, and you were telling me about the amazing team Samtec has in-house. Two things. I want to talk about why is signal integrity seem like we're talking about it more and more, and what led us to this place where you guys are creating more content around the issue of Signal Integrity 101.
Well, sure. There's kind of three questions there. So
yes.
First, signal integrity has sort of come to the forefront for one simple reason. As we go faster, more things break. The more things break, usually it often has something to do with signal integrity. And so as a result, you need signal integrity engineering and signal integrity engineers to solve those sorts of deep problems with products. What I like to say is no company starts doing signal integrity engineering and developing a group of people to perform those analysis until stuff breaks. As soon as the product isn't working and it becomes a signaling problem, then what happens is all stops are pulled and you bring in a team of professionals to do that, whether it be consultants, people from other companies, your suppliers, or your own in-house people. That's that way it happened at Intel. It's the way it happened pretty much everywhere in the industry. And until it was a problem, it wasn't a problem, and we didn't have signal integrity engineers.
Well, it just seems... go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I think that answers my question. I feel like because the speeds are going up, and Matt, just before DesignCon, you were talking about 224 gigs. And it's like, no wonder. I think there's a lot of stuff breaking or trying to figure out how to make something go that isn't going now. So that sort of answers my question because... Now, do you think... This is sort of an aside question. I didn't float by you ahead of time, but do you think we're doing a good job in the industry letting universities know that this demand is growing and that this might be a good discipline to pursue?
I think we're doing a better job.
Okay.
In the past, there were very few universities that had any specialties in the area of signal integrity engineering. But what has happened in the last, say, 10 years is that they have started universities are actually creating curriculums around the subject. And so at least up through the master's level, and there's some that offer PhD programs that incorporate signal integrity practices in them.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I could just add another angle there too, Judy, just to back up what Scott says. One of the things that Samtec's been really involved with is that a lot of undergraduate programs in electrical engineering have senior capstone design projects,
Mm-hmm.
and some of those programs are starting to have a bent, I guess, towards signal integrity. Now, it's not to the
Hmm.
master's level and PhD level that most OEM companies need, but at least it's starting to introduce the concepts beyond a basic electromagnetics class at the undergraduate level. Samtec has been really focused on trying to participate in those programs. So we've been working with such universities as Penn State, Penn State University in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is obviously a big
Mm-hmm.
big design center for the interconnect industry. It's often called the
Right.
connector capital of the world. We're working with University of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina. We've worked with the University of Colorado in Boulder
Mm-hmm.
on these capstone design projects, and it's really given Samtec and our competitors, our frenemies, as well as the semiconductor companies, test and measurement companies, the ability to really start to influence the next generation of engineers so that, like Scott said, when they come into the industry, there's at least a larger baseline for some of the basics of signal integrity.
Yeah, it just seems to me, at least from my seat in the house, that people, OEMs are always looking for more of that, and more so in the last, say, 5 years, then it just seems to be getting more and more demand instead of less. So it's really good to hear Samtec's doing that because I think that's where at least some of the solution will lie is
Yeah.
connecting companies like Samtec to industries and letting them know what's happening in industry. So Matt, you had your hands on. I didn't know this earlier, but when COVID hit, we all went home. We all started doing what we've been doing for the last 2.5 years or almost 3 years, I guess now. And GEEk was launched, which was an online digital education platform. And I remember just as an observer watching and consuming it just out of pure interest. And I'm like, what a great idea. And it seems like it got stood up really fast. That's how I got to know Scott McMorrow. And then I reached out to you guys to teach the audience about, man, this is really good content. And of course, Scott, with all your signal integrity knowledge, so Matt, you had your fingers on the pulse. How did it get started? And then where are we today? And just give us the geek spiel.
Yeah, I appreciate you trying to give me credit for the launch of the idea of GeekSpeak, but honestly, that was Scott's idea. I want to make sure he gets the credit he deserves. But we found ourselves it's probably the end of March, early of April of 20, when we're in the depths of or just I guess the ramping up of the COVID isolation,
Right.
and we're like,
Yeah.
so Scott's like, hey, we've got this great opportunity. We've got this captive audience that needs to keep their technologies up. And, we thought about trying to do something formal for like CEUs and things like that, but that just proved to be too much of a workload. So
Right.
very quickly, Scott, Istvan, Gus, some of our other SI technology leaders, and some of our up and coming SI engineers as well. We really were able to launch GeekSpeak, and the reception was more than we could have anticipated. Because we had so much content, we started with we were doing a bi-weekly cadence for several months, and then and out of the gate, 75, 100, 150. I mean, some of the Geek Speaks, I think we had north of 200 engineers speaking. So, we got quick momentum. Word on the street, kind of got out, and we started attracting this consistent following. Now, obviously, we couldn't keep up the cadence of twice a month, so we kind of moved back to monthly, and ever since probably I think early 22, last year and a half or so, we've been doing a monthly cadence, and it's been working out really well. And Scott's mentioned this in some of his podcasts and in some of his writings in the past. Samtec continues to make investments in expanding RSI capabilities to the. I think the latest. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott. I think we have over 80 SI specialists in some
It's
form.
Yeah, it's somewhere north of 80.
Yeah, somewhere north of 80 internal to the company. So not only do we need to keep them sharp and helping to develop their skill sets with experts like Scott and Isfan and Gus and Rich Mellitz, but that's all. GeekSpeak has also given them an opportunity to uh, get better at presenting the technology, feel more comfortable with technology, and taking answers in a much more open-ended, real-time environment. What's been really cool about it too is that because we've been doing it for the better part of delivering these GeekSpeak webinar series for the better part of 3 years, we've really diversified into a number of topics. So it sort of started out as a SI 101 educational tool, but we've been able to do deep dives on the nuances of twin-ax cabling and how that affects system design, but also SI performance. We have one of our specialists here at Samtec, Steve Kruzwick. He does a lot of work within the PCI SIG community around developing next generation of PCI Express technology, and he's done 2 or 3 webinars on some of the nuances of working with that, implementing that at PCI 4, PCI 5, PCI 6. We've done some things around RF. Isfan is known for his work on power integrity. So he's been able to give a number of presentations on that. So the nice thing is that, great success, great following, great consistency over the last 3+ years. And what we're finding out now is that we're in the second quarter of 23 is that there's almost a refocusing on SI 101. We've got all this master's level, maybe PhD level information that's available on GeekSpeak. But it's like, you know what, let's revisit some of these topics that we may have skipped over to help general problems. And this goes back to, I think, what you and I talked about on our last podcast, Judy, is that data centers bleeding edge, 220, 112 for design, and now 224 coming over the next couple of years. But when you look at other industries, 28 gigabit is bleeding edge.
Right.
15 gigabit may be bleeding edge. Yeah, so whether that's industrial or embedded or medical or automotive or whatever. So the same, this is maybe just my pea brain thinking, but I tend to think of data center being bleeding edge, and then the embedded, which is a very loosely defined term, the embedded ecosystem maybe being a generation or 2 behind in terms of implementing those speeds. But that doesn't mean that implementing all those SI characteristics, making sure the signal is clean, is easy. So we found, I'm getting a little long-winded as usual here, so I'll try to wrap up.
No, it's good stuff.
But what we've seen is, okay, we used to have data center SI engineers or semiconductor SI engineers or test and measurement SI engineers. But now we're starting to see the SI engineers from medical or embedded or industrial or whatever, because, okay, they don't need to implement PCI 6 or PCI 7, but someone needs to implement PCI 3 or PCI 4. So we're definitely expanding our focus and trying to support the needs that the industry has across the application space.
It always reminds me of John Wooden, the famous basketball coach, and it was all about the fundamentals. He started teaching these 7-foot giants right out of the bat how to put their socks on and tie their shoes. So kind of what I hear you saying is you're going back to those fundamentals, right? Because there's way more probably of those folks. It's really easy to get focused on the ultra high speed stuff because that's the front end, but that makes a lot of sense to me. So Scott, over these last 2 or 3 years, and so sorry for trying to give Matt credit for your work. I know you're doing all the hard work.
It's okay.
So GeekSpeak, you're now going into your 3rd year, you're pivoting a little bit, but what has been, again, and true, I'm just a fan. I really found it. I liked it. And I wanted to talk about it and share it with engineering professionals that I know because I thought it was so good. And what has been the feedback over these 3 years? And then in regards to fundamentals, what would you like to see covered?
Well, the feedback has been, 99% positive. Any negative feedback is, oh, well, we slightly disagree with you on this, or, we would like a little bit more information on that. But in general, there's been a number of people that have come back and said this is some of the best training they've ever had in
Mm.
anywhere in the industry. And we, and that was our purpose, was to create training for everybody, because none of this is easy. Everybody needs to be brought up on different techniques. Even during the middle of a GeekSpeak presentation by my colleagues, I learn things, and that causes me to think about other things that are interesting. Um, and I'll go back and say, back in the kind of the dawn of the microcomputer era, in the late 90s, Intel was having some problems with some market penetration on motherboards with chipsets.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so what they found was that part of the problem was the designers didn't know how to design this stuff in. They didn't understand some of the signal integrity principles and electrical principles that were involved. And they were much simpler back then. We're talking 90 megahertz processors
Mm-hmm.
at the time. But that's when they started creating the Intel yellow cover design kits, right? The secret and top secret design kits that everybody around the world gets. And what they did was to create a design kit that gave you the design essentially. And that's a good strategy, as long as you don't want, as your strategy assumes that you're always going to be able to give them the design.
Mm-hmm.
Samtec, going on 20 years ago, we came up with the concept of final inch. The idea was to give people the final inch design for a connector. We said the connector does not end at the connector, it includes the printed circuit board. What it's mounted on is all part of the connector system. So
Mm.
let's give that to them. What I said with GeekSpeak was, let's teach them how to do this. Let's give them all the first principles. Let's show them what can be done. And let's try to make the world of engineers, better signal integrity engineers. And as a side effect, well, they might want to use our parts. That would be a really nice thing. But we think that if we can float the entire industry up in capability,
Mm-hmm.
we're all going to win. And that was our philosophy. For this next realm of Geek Speak, we're going to do two things. We're going to continue presenting advanced information, but we're now also going to present SI 101 kind of information in a more advanced way. We're going to talk about what are the principles involved, how do we apply them, and why are they important to you? Because the realization is, just because you came out of college with a degree and you might have taken one or two classes in SI engineering, you don't know everything. You can't possibly. I've been in the industry for over 40 years, and I don't know everything. Um, we all learn from each other, and that's the whole
Mm-hmm.
philosophy. And let's do some simpler things, but let's keep them at a high level, so that in many cases we learned these things in college, especially the newer people, but we didn't learn them at the level that we need as a practicing engineer. We learned about transmission lines when we didn't know when we didn't even know how to apply a transmission line.
Right.
We still suffer from the fundamental error of thinking of things like circuits. So the idea of return current makes no sense when you learned, when you created the first circuit you created in electrical engineering. it was a battery, right, and a switch, and maybe a
Right.
capacitor.
Right.
Well, that's not a very interesting system, and we're taught that the current flows in a loop. What we're not
Hmm.
taught at that time is that the current at the electromagnetic field actually travels as a wave, and the
Hmm.
current is actually a result of the electromagnetic field. Um, and that's a little bit harder to grasp. So we want people to grasp kind of the next level fundamentals
I,
because they're very
mhm.
powerful in application in further electrical engineering and
I
signal
love that
integrity.
you're giving people the knowledge and the principles because you're right. Theory and taking a couple classes and doing a simple capstone is not going to prepare you for the real world. And so I really appreciate that Samtec's investing in this way. Scott, Matt, both of you, what does Samtec do with 80 SI engineers? Like, what is their scope of work in addition to? Because I know there's a lot of people presenting in Geek Speak, but like, what do they do on the day to day when they're not teaching other engineers? Like, why is Samtec investing in this way?
Oh, well, so we mostly just watch cat videos most of the time.
Well, that's what you do up in Maine, Scott, right? That's what all the remote folks do, right?
Well, that's those are we in Maine we watch Maine Coon cat videos. Um, no, well, so if we think about so you have to start with what Samtec makes. We have in the area of what we would call high performance products. We have board to board connectors. We have
Mm-hmm.
dozens of families of different board to board connectors. We have RF connectors. We have RF cables. We have flyover interconnect with Twinax. We have power connectors, and just I'm sure I've missed one there, but essentially, if you just take each one of those, we need a minimum of three or four qualified engineers just to get these products out, to help the mechanical designers design them, and to
Mm,
document them and provide the original collateral and documentation for customers. Then
mm,
alongside, we said, okay, we have a frontline support department, which is called FAST now, which I have no idea what that acronym means, if, um, but it's
but it's fast.
and that goes along with the Samtec sudden service. So
Mm,
we are a marketing service oriented company, and so we have a group of SI engineers that are simply dedicated to frontline customer support,
mm,
and it's
okay.
everything like I don't understand why my connector doesn't mount on my board correctly. I don't know how to interpret this drawing to, how do I design a 112 gigabit per second link with this connector? And I'm going to tie you up and make you jump through a bunch of hoops in order to get it done. So
Hmm.
there, just in that group, we have probably five, and I don't, these aren't, these are just off the top of my head, about five engineers that directly interface with the customers. Then alongside of that, we have our system engineering group that Gus Blondo is part of, and they actually work together. So we've divided it up into essentially the simple stuff and the hard stuff. So we have basically frontline takes care of everything, and when it gets too hard, it goes over to our team that's able to do anything up to 224 gigabits per second, and can provide custom consulting for customers.
Hmm.
So that creates a lot of people. Then we have a team of layout professionals that are signal integrity oriented layout people, which we have trained in our own practices and principles. We have a group that does software to write code for our internal analysis tools, and for our demonstrators. And we decided that we would make our entire demonstration, all of our demonstrations that we give at DesignCon and other places, and our customer evaluation boards, those are all done by our active system group, which basically designs complete boards and systems. So very quickly, we've spun up these huge numbers of groups and people. We have a few people involved in coax and twinax development. Um, and I've probably forgotten about a dozen other people. And now we also have optical people that are part of the
Mm,
group now, and
yeah.
electro-optical engineers.
Mm-hmm.
We've got several optical groups in Samtec, and we have a silicon design group now for designing basically on-device optical components, essentially. So
Amazing.
there's a huge we kind of span the system to the connector signal integrity
I see.
in our department. So that's why we have so many. And this GeekSpeak training is good for them too, because as when new people come in, we can say, okay, go start looking at GeekSpeaks and learn everything that you can. And there have been so many times when somebody would have a question, and I would just say, hey, we have a GeekSpeak on this. Why don't you go review that? And then if you have questions, come back.
I see. So you're using it sort of bidirectionally, both as a support tool because of the width of your product line, but you're also using it sort of proactively, to train up and sort of give back. I love that your team, Scott, of whence you speak. You guys are deep in the weeds, which I think uniquely qualifies you to really put out world-class education. So, Matt, you are closely involved in all the educational stuff at Samtec. So you have and for our audience, I'm going to share the links to GeekSpeak and everything we're talking about in the show notes. So don't worry about writing anything down. Don't crash your car. Don't stop
Yay.
on the treadmill, because we'll have all that for you to check below. But Matt, what else do you have coming in regards to GeekSpeak? And tell our audience where else they can tap into resources that you have your hand on the pulse of.
No, that's a great question, Judy. And I guess I would answer that by just for 30 seconds or so, just talking about my journey. When I came
Okay.
to when I came to Samtec 7.5, 8 years ago, whatever it's been, I knew the basics of interconnect, but I didn't know anything about high speed. And I kind of joked, I really haven't been a practicing engineer for a good 18 to 20 years. I've been playing on the other side of the other side of the fence in sales and marketing for a number of reasons. But the reason I bring that up is that while listening to and working with Scott and Isvan and Gus and Rich Mellets and Steve Kruzwick and all these various experienced professionals, I've learned to at least be somewhat conversant, semi-conversant, whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
just by osmosis. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, getting a chance to co-host GeekSpeak and some of the other things that we work on with Scott and the other leaders we talked about, I feel like I got a front row seat to this world-class education
Mm,
that we've put out, that we continue to produce and continue to put out, not only internally for our use, but also for our customers. Now it's hard for me to implement it because I don't work on these challenges on a
right.
day-to-day basis. I just kind of tend to talk about it a lot, which is fine by me because I don't face any of these tough questions. I say, hey Scott, customer XYZ needs help. Can you? That's what I do. So Scott always helps, and I talk about it and point people in the right direction to the really smart people, which makes my job easier, by the way. But anyway, so to continue upon that, we've really seen, even though GeekSpeak has grown by itself, one of the things that we face, and Scott even mentioned this, some of the questions that we get through our SI FAST team or frontline support team, a lot of these questions are very entry level SI 101 stuff.
I
So
see.
yeah, and it's not that we don't want to educate the industry. And it's not that we don't want to educate our customers because we feel that that's part of our mission. But at the same time, we don't have infinite resources. So
Right.
we kind of think, how can we more efficiently kind of answer those questions on a larger scale? So there's a couple things that we've been working on in addition to GeekSpeak to kind of work towards that goal.
Okay.
One of them we talked about earlier this year. Samtec originally had come out with its SI 101 handbook, probably in 2007 2008 timeframe, and we realized it was an underutilized resource. But at the same time, it needed refreshed because obviously we've had a tremendous amount of innovation, not only for the interconnect industry, but just in high-speed design. 15 years ago, we were looking at 10 gigabit. Now we're talking about 224. So there's just a bunch of nuance that you have to worry about. And, Scott's mentioned some of that today and how you optimize the channel. So we work with with a number of SI leaders to update, refresh, enhance the SI handbook. And we released it at DesignCon 23 earlier this year, unofficially. It's on the website. You can download it for free. It's not gated in any function. And the feedback that we've gotten on that, directly and anecdotally, has been nothing short of positive. We were at another trade show. I think it was OFC. And there was a SI specialist from one of our competitors. I won't mention which one. And he's a very esteemed SI engineer in his own right in the industry, akin to Scott and some of our specialists. And he came up to me. He's like, "Man, this is one of the best SI pieces I've ever seen you guys make." My son's is a double E major. I forget what school, University of Illinois, I think, or something like that. Another Big Ten school. And he's like, "I'm giving this to him because he needs it for his classes. Thanks." And I thought, you know what? This is someone that knows his stuff. I mean, really, really well.
Right.
And so to me, I thought that was. I'd love to name the engineer, but I don't want to put him out here without asking for his permission, because everybody knows him. But to me, I thought that was the greatest compliment for the things that we continue to work on. So our SI handbook has been really popular. It's free for download, and we'll, as you mentioned in the show notes, you can see where to do that on our website. We're really using that SI handbook as a call to action for some of these SI 101 Geek Speaks. So some of the Geek Speaks that we've already presented this year, some of the Geek Speaks that we're going to be presenting this summer, second half of 23, are literally going to answer questions from the SI handbook, but do a deeper dive than the 1 or 2 pages that are in there. And Scott's kind of alluded to that a little bit. Not only is it the topic, but what do we do with this from an application standpoint? Yeah. So that's coming. Something else that we're working on and we're hoping to launch by the end of Q2 is, we've got GeekSpeak webinars that are hour long, plus or minus, that answer a topic really well. But what happens if someone only has this much time to learn about a certain topic? So we're getting ready to launch what we're calling our GeekSpeak video series. And it's really designed to be a 1 to 2 minute video that we're going to post on our YouTube channel. We're going to build up an encyclopedia of these videos, and it's going to answer one question. It may be as basic as what is insertion loss, or something that's way more complex as what is COM.
Right.
And we want to use the our experienced experts like Scott and Rich and the other folks we've already mentioned to some of our other engineers that are up and coming that have a concept. We're really going to span the breadth of our knowledge base here at Samtec. So we're really looking forward to that, and we really think that's going to resonate with a lot of our audience. So when you look at these three main areas we're reaching out with, GeekSpeak obviously is the flagship. Our SI handbook complements that, and it's an on-demand resource that anyone can use. And then finally, we're bringing up our GeekSpeak video series, which again is really going to be focused on, short 1 minute, 2 minute bits on how to answer a technical question. And then obviously, we're going to make this all available to the industry through our email and our social media and things like that. So we're really excited about it. Judy, this is the GeekSpeak video series is something that we've been talking about for a long time, and we finally feel like the time is right to launch these efforts, and we're really excited to see. We're confident, hopeful is probably a better word, that the reception for the video series will be just as strong as the GeekSpeak webinar series and our SI handbook.
Well, I really appreciate you guys and Samtec. I mean, the depth of your bench, but the way that you teach and train. Do you want people to buy your products? Yes, as often and as much as possible. But you really do this in a way that feels empowering to engineers, and it couldn't come at a better time because there's just not enough good SI content out there, so that you guys have stood up and invested in it. I really appreciate from sort of an altruistic way. You also may be saving yourself from some tech support calls you don't want to do, but
yes.
so Scott can watch more cat videos. But
That's right.
Hey, Judy, on a side note, if anyone wants Scott's cell phone number, just contact me via LinkedIn, and you can contact him 24/7. I'm kidding, Scott. I'm not going to do that. I'm
yeah. We know where you live, Scott McMorrow. So, well, gentlemen, really, all seriousness, thank you so much. I really do always have appreciated the things that Samtec does to help engineers, which is why I wanted to have you on and talk about what you've got coming, and to learn more about what's on the horizon. So, again, for our listeners, I'm going to load up the show notes with those 3 resources, and make sure you come over and subscribe to the ecosystem as well, because I'm going to have some downloads for you there. So we want to keep equipping you to do your very best work. Gentlemen, thank you. Any last thoughts before I let you go? I know you're busy.
No, but thank you, Judy. I appreciate the time and appreciate being able to talk to engineers like this in a much simpler way than normal.
Yeah. Judy, it's always a privilege to be here. Thank you for the time. Scott, it's always fun being with you. Appreciate it as well.
Well, to our listeners, thanks so much for joining us today and learning, taking a page from the playbook of Scott McMorrow and Matt Burns. We'll see you next time. Make sure you go get the show notes. We'll see you next time. Until then, remember to always stay connected to the ecosystem.